Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Casey Cardinia Libraries event with the lovely Sally Hepworth on this very warm Melbourne evening. I'll give everyone a brief rundown of your writing life, Sally, so far. Okay, Sally Hepworth is the best-selling author of 6 novels. She draws on the good, the bad, and the downright odd of human behaviour and writes incisively about family, relationships, and identity. Her domestic thriller novels are laced with quirky humour, sass, and a darkly charming tone. There will be an opportunity towards the end for Sally to answer any questions that you want to put in, so please pop all your questions in the chat section and we will get to them then. Sally's novels are available worldwide in English and have been translated into 20 languages. She lives in Melbourne, Australia, with her husband, 3 children, and their dog, Hannah. Welcome, Sally, to Casey Cardinia Libraries. We're so glad to have you here.
Oh, it's so lovely to be here. I just wish I could be there in person.
I know. Never mind, your time will come for that. Yeah. Now, your new novel, The Good Sister, which I have got right here. That's the one, and you can see it behind Sally in the screen, has just been released, and personally, I think it's your best book yet. But that's just my opinion because I'm lucky enough to have already read a copy of it. Can you tell our listeners, basically, the ones that have been living under a rock or something, what The Good Sister is all about?
I sure can. The Good Sister is primarily, as you might have guessed, about sisters, but it's also about neurodiverse love and finding your person. It's got mystery and menace and twists and turns, and it's almost exclusively set in a library, which I think a lot of people will, well, I hope that people love libraries as much as I do. But at the real heart of this book is a character called Fern, who is a librarian, and she is possibly on the autism spectrum, although she has not been diagnosed. And she is incredibly close to and incredibly reliant on her twin sister. And in fact, she's so close that when she discovers that her twin sister can't have a baby for herself, she takes it upon herself to try and have that baby for her sister, unbeknownst to her sister. And it's that decision that really kicks the book off. It leads Fern, our heroine, to discovering a whole lot of things about herself, about her sister, and about their childhood. And that's where the real menace comes into the book.
Yeah. And look, I must say, bravo about writing a book about libraries. I've been saying for years there are not enough novels out there about libraries, and I can tell you that you must have done a lot of research because you nailed it. You really did, about the quirky characters that come in, the people that complain about fines on their card, the abuse that us library workers cop from time to time. It was all, I just kept nodding, going, yes, this is so right. This is so right. But I believe you actually write in a library yourself.
I do, and that's how I had access to this just wealth of information, both librarians at my beck and call. I was able to ask them about what do you actually do all day, because so many people just think that you recommend books, but in fact the role of librarian seems to encompass everything from recommending books, filing books, organising events. They're a mobile library unit. I mean, I'm doing the PR for the library.
You are, and you're doing a great job.
Because I'm a big fan, and I have spent most of my life either in a library, and now as an adult I write my books from the library. And The Good Sister, which is set in the Bayside Library, I also wrote in the Brighton Library, as it happens. So I've heard all the quirky people, I've spoken to the librarians, I got to have a tour of the staff room and all the little nooks and crannies. There's a little room in the book that Fern goes into to have time alone, and that really existed in the library.
I wish we had one of them in our libraries, because at times you feel like just going and rocking in a corner somewhere, you know, when you've had an encounter with somebody. It would be great to have a room like that.
I wish that I had one in my house, you know, especially during lockdown.
And also the fact that Fern totally avoided questions about helping people on computers and with printer problems. We can so relate to that. We really can.
Well, that's what I heard all day long. The librarians were going back and forth from the photocopiers, and you could see that really no one likes those questions. And so that was a real fundamental of my librarian, Fern, that she really didn't have time for questions about the photocopier.
Yeah. But look, I loved the way you portrayed the library too, that it's not just all about books, it's about the people and the services that they offer. It was fascinating that there was a shower in the library. I thought, gee, we could do with one of those as well.
Yes. And there was one in the Brighton Library. They have just renovated it, and there is no longer a shower, but there was one there for quite some time. And I know that in some of the different libraries around Melbourne, especially the ones closer to the city where they do have more of a homeless population, there is often showers there too, because libraries are just this amazing resource for everyone, not just the wealthy, not just, it's for everyone.
It's a community hub. That's what we like to call it. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, the relationship between the two sisters, now it was close, but I felt, no spoilers tonight, but I felt that Rose gave Fern the impression that she was really looking after her and helping her. But in reality, it wasn't quite true, was it?
It was not quite true. And I think that sisters is such an interesting relationship to explore. And one of the things I touch on is that idea of blurred boundaries and especially with twins, where do I start and where does my sister stop, that kind of relationship. And that was definitely true with Fern and Rose, not only because they're twins and not only because Fern has a disability, as it were, or additional needs, but also because they'd shared this really difficult childhood together and really believed that all they had was each other. And so I think that led Fern to believe that Rose was really, her word was gospel, and that was to her detriment to some extent.
Yeah. And with Fern's OCD habits, that she was probably in a good place in the library because we like to have things in order and everything, so she was probably had the right occupation for someone with that. But how much research did you actually have to do, with Fern with OCD, Rose with diabetes? Did you have to do a bit of research around that?
I did. Well, regarding the neurodiverse side of it and the sensory processing issues, that's something that is very much a part of my immediate family and also my extended family. And so I like to say that I've been doing research most of my life on those particular issues, and more recently, with my children. And so part of the kind of joy of that was that insofar as the neurodiversity, I just got to create the character of Fern. I wasn't looking back and forth from books to make sure I was getting it right, as it were, which I think would have been a mistake anyway, because, in fact, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. You need to focus on character. Everyone is a person, everyone is different. And in the book, we have Fern and Wally, who potentially both are on the spectrum, and yet they're so different. And I wanted that to be the case, because I wanted it to be seen that this is not autism. This is not autism. In fact, these are all people. And I felt a real responsibility.
See the person, not the issue, not the disease, sort of thing. Yeah,
exactly. And so that part of it, it was a real joy creating Fern and not having to kind of rely on the book. She came to me as a real person and lived and breathed, and that was great. As you said, diabetes took some research, also some fertility research that I had to do. There's always bits and pieces of research that some of it happens on the fly. I have an idea and I think, let me see if this is going to work, and I'll do a little Google search and maybe ring someone that is an expert. And that was definitely true with this book. But it actually, because of my experience with neurodiversity, it wasn't, say, like the Secrets of Midwives or The Things We Keep, which was a book about early onset Alzheimer's. They were very research heavy, and this book was far more led by the characters.
Right. Now, I've read all of your books, and it seems that with each one, especially the last three, the tone of your books are starting to get a little bit darker compared to the earlier books, which is great. I love it. And you're tending to lean a little bit more into the domestic suspense category, do you think?
I think so. That's definitely what my publishers are calling it. Yeah.
What do you
I don't-
prefer to write? Do you prefer to write this style, or do you prefer to write like the straight women's fiction, which your early or your first one I would have classed as definitely women's fiction? Yeah.
Yes, and it's funny. I don't make a lot of decisions when it comes to being a writer or genre. People say, was this an intentional foray into domestic suspense? The answer is no. I came up, I think the mother-in-law was probably, or perhaps even the family next door took a little bit of a veer into something a bit more suspenseful and a bit more of a mystery. But really, it's the idea hits me, and that particular idea had suspense in it. And then the mother-in-law, of course, was centered around a mother-in-law who was murdered. And no one was more surprised than me when I went to Dymocks and I was told that my book had been shelved in crime. And I thought, wow, doesn't that make me cool? Like, I feel like I wear hearts and red lipstick. I do not look like a crime writer. I feel like I need to get a bit more black and a bit more, intense. I'm smiley, do smiley people write crime? So that was a surprise to me. And as always, I'm driven by the idea. And lately the ideas have been suspenseful. I like to think that my earlier books also had suspense, even though it wasn't quite as menacing. So, look, I don't know what's going to happen next, but what I can tell you is that it's guaranteed to have had no thought put into it before I do it.
Well, that'll make all those aspiring writers out there feel a hell of a lot better, won't it?
Yes.
Now, The Mother-in-Law has been optioned for TV, as we know, by Amy Poehler. Have you got an update on that at the moment, or have they all been shut down because of COVID and nothing has happened?
Look, we have had some movement. I mean, you're right. Hollywood has closed down because of the COVID situation. Not a lot of acting has been happened because it's not safe. But there has been little bits of action happening behind the scenes. I've seen an updated script recently. We have attached a character to play Diana, but I can't tell you who it is. But I can tell you that it's a very, very exciting actress, and I can't wait to tell you who it is. And hopefully I'll be able to announce it soon.
And hopefully they haven't diverted too much from the book, because there's nothing more annoying than that when you've read the book and then you watch the film and go, no, it's not the same. It's totally different, or they've twisted this or they've done that, and that's really annoying. So hopefully they haven't done that. Do you get to have a look at the script before it's...
I do. I've read 2 scripts and they change, they evolve, and I'm an executive producer, as it were, although I'm not sure how much of a say I really get, but they do include me in the process. And, so far, certainly, they are making it better. So I'm very happy.
Oh, good. Oh, well, that's good. Now, tell our listeners about your whirlwind trip to America last year too. If anyone who follows Sally on Instagram, I was glued. It was just fascinating. But you were only there for 48 hours or something?
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary time. It's funny to think even now that you could travel last year, isn't it?
I know.
To the other side of the world. But the way that happened, I got an email. It was June last year, and the mother-in-law had just come out, and I got an email from my American publicist who said that Good Morning America wanted to have me on the show to talk about the mother-in-law, and would I consider coming over just to film this sort of 15-minute segment and then fly back. And I said, of course.
Why not?
Met me? I'd go to the opening of an envelope if it was in New York. So I signed up, didn't even ask Christian. I assumed, he'd have the kids. And I hopped over there, and as it happened, I arranged a few other meetings and things. So it extended to a few days. And then while I was in New York, I'd shot the Good Morning America segment that day. And we had just been in discussions with Amy Poehler at that time. We'd had one phone conversation about the mother-in-law, and more things had been arranged. And my agent rang me from LA and said, are you free tomorrow morning to have breakfast with Amy Poehler? And I said, oh
my God,
check my diary. Yes, I am. And so we had breakfast at the Beverly Hills Hotel. It was just magnificent. She was just as down to earth and lovely and funny, and she arrived with wet hair and no makeup, and she was on her way to fly somewhere to chair a panel on something. And, she was amazing. And I managed to keep it cool most of the way through breakfast. And we talked about the book and our kids. And then we got to the end and we were walking out to the car, and the valets were getting the cars and bringing them around. And I thought, I can't leave without getting a selfie. I'd promised Lisa.
Absolutely.
Yes. But I knew that as soon as I did that, I would lose all credibility and all kind of idea that we're peers, as it were, and that, I was not incredibly overwhelmed, excited and starstruck by her. But we got to the cars and I thought, Lisa Island is going to kill me if I do not get a photo. And so I got out the camera and I said, do you mind if I have a selfie? And she was so kind. We got a few. We checked that we all looked okay. And then we hugged it out and she left, which, again, being able to hug, feels like a distant memory.
So much has changed.
But yeah, look, it was a quite surreal 3 days, really. And, one only hopes that is possible again in the future. But even if it doesn't happen again, you've
always got America. And
always
just the things that you said in your Instagram thing was, should I be tipping this person? Like, it was the hair and makeup people that blew in and made you look magnificent in 20 minutes, and then they left and you thought, should I have tipped them? I don't know, because we're so ignorant about these things over here.
The tipping, it does my head in every time. I always say that I want to arrive at the airport and I just want to pay a tariff that will cover all of the tips, so I don't have to fundle. I mean, who even has cash these days? I just want to tap. Can I just tap my tip? Everyone gets a tip if I can tap.
But they don't do tapping over there, I don't think.
No, well, they're probably getting a bit better, I think. But
now
I just either really over tipped, a ridiculous amount, or I didn't tip them at all. There was no in between, and it was that was the worst part of the trip, the tipping.
Yeah. Well, never mind. Next time when you go over for the premiere of The Mother-in-Law, you'll have people, you'll have your person that will just look after all that for you. And that's
tipper.
Exactly. And that's to say that's their total role, is just to make sure that everyone gets tipped where they need to.
I'll bring Christian, and his role can be tipper. He's good at it.
Will he be your trophy boy, your trophy date or something?
Yeah, exactly. He's my what we were saying, HABs, husbands and boyfriends. Like the opposite of wags. He'd like that. He'll get a frog.
Well, I hope to goodness Reese or Nicole are getting sent a copy of The Good Sister, because I reckon it will make a fantastic movie.
Oh, I think so too. And I think that it is being sent around Hollywood by my agent, but who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. It is nice to see a lot more books being made into movies now too. There seems to be a lot of them lately, which is great.
It sure is. Things like Netflix and the volume that is available to people now has really meant that a lot of things are getting made. It's great for authors.
Yeah. Now, can you tell us a bit about your beginnings as a writer? I remember when you came to Endeavour Hills with Lisa a couple of years ago that you told everybody that you literally Googled, how do I write a book?
I did. And I often tell people that, and they laugh. And you know what? Google has the answers to pretty much any question that you can ask. And I was saying this recently on my Instagram, that I get a lot of questions from aspiring authors who want to know how it's done. And the truth is that you just kind of have to figure it out, and Google is a part of it. And so for me, I thought, I know, with that blind kind of enthusiasm and, no idea of a newbie, I thought I'll write a book. Right. Open Google. How do I write a book? And Google then spat out a couple of ideas of how to do it. I picked one and I started writing. And I think that is sometimes half the battle is you can procrastinate too much with trying to get it the right way or get every question answered. And I was on maternity leave that year with my first child. So that was 11 years ago. And I spent that year writing in nap times and while he was sleeping and while he was playing quietly on the floor. He's my best kid of the three. That wouldn't have happened with Clementine or Eloise. And I wrote the book that year while I was on maternity leave, but it didn't turn out to be a big bestseller, unfortunately. And so I kept writing. I went back to work and I wrote. And is that the cat?
No, that's my husband. He's
Oh.
doing something on his phone. I'm just telling him to be quiet.
Oh, hate it when they do that. And I wrote the book that year. I kept writing on the side. When I went back to work, I wrote at lunchtime, at my desk, and I just kept going. And it was when I was pregnant with Eloise, my second child, that I got the book deal for the Secrets of Midwives. And that was lucrative enough that I then gave up the day job, and I have been a writer since then. But let's not forget that there were 2 failed manuscripts in there. There's been a failed manuscript since then. And, so it's not, you never make it, It's just all about the last book and about continuing to write and try and do better.
Because at one stage you were writing a book when you had a baby. So if that all happened, you would have had 6 kids by now if you'd kept that trend up.
I've written through 3 pregnancies and 3 babies. And I remember, I think it was right after I had Clementine, someone said to me, "So do you have to be pregnant to write a book?" And I said, "Well, gee, I hope not." Because this is it.
Now, you were living in Canada at the time when you first started writing. What took you to Canada?
Christian's job took us there. Before we were married, we were just young lovers, and his job moved us there. So I went over, I got a job there, and we got engaged and married. And by the time we came back, we had a baby. So it was
you go. It all happened quickly.
It did, but it's a lovely, and my son is Canadian now for life. So We've got a very special connection to the country.
Oh, that's lovely. Now, recently, I did an interview with Monica McInerney a month or so ago, and she was saying that when she was going to launch one of her books in America, her American publisher told her she had to change things, like the footpath. It had to be the pavement, the sidewalk. Instead of putting nappies on, it had to be diapers and things like that. Have you found that? Because some of yours are set in America, but the most recent ones are all set over here. What happens in that case over there? Do they ask you to change things?
Well, usually they will change it so those kind of dialect things, they will change them for me. So generally how it should work, and it's not always as clean as this, but I have different publishers in different parts of the world. There's one in England, one in Australia, one in America, and they will all get sent the same version of the book. They will give me their feedback. I will work on one master document, edit it, get it perfect, and then they get the final copies. And so the Americans will be allowed to change it to they can change it to the American language for sure. They will run it past me if it's something that's not a direct translation, like nappies and diapers. Like I think there was some kind of meal that was changed to meatloaf.
Oh. Well, they're big on meatloaf over there, aren't they? We're not.
No.
That doesn't really matter.
It wasn't significant to the scene, so it was okay. But generally those things that they will change to suit their audience once they've got the final version.
Okay. Now, with 6 books under your belt, do you find it gets easier to write a book or not?
Yes and no. I think to some extent there is a belief that, I've done this before. I've got through the hard, especially that kind of pesky middle bit where you're just not sure if it's going to come together. In that period, for sure, the knowledge that I've done it before, and also that there's someone waiting for it, the publisher, that helps me. But I do find that every book has got its own unique challenges, and sometimes it's a plot that I have to really wrestle with. Sometimes it's a character that isn't quite working. Sometimes the premise has trouble and I have to change it. I've yet to have a book or write a book that has been painless, I can tell you. And I'm starting to believe that perhaps I won't, and that really anything worth doing has a little bit of pain. So yes and no. There's bits of confidence that increase with each book, but also, as we know, I've had a failed book too, and so that knocks the confidence again. So each book's a newbie.
again, Monica McInerney was telling us about a book that that's why it's been so long in between her current book and her last book, that she wrote a book over there and she just said, no, this was the book that I had to write for myself, but it will never, ever see the light of day. Have you, I believe you have a manuscript as well that sort of fits into that category. Can you share with us the story? Because it is very, very funny.
It's a good story. That's amazing about Monica McInerney, and it's quite nice to hear that as an author, because I don't think a lot of people talk about that. But as soon as you start to talk about it, which obviously I'm a talker, as you know, I tell everyone everything. Yes. Even my mum always says to me, that's too much information, Sally. Keep some things to yourself. But, and so, yes, there's absolutely phases. I did write a book. The reason that it's been almost 2 years between The Mother-in-Law and The Good Sister is because there should have been a book out in January this year, that according to my normal trajectory. And I wrote that book, which was about a swingers party. And anyone who wants to hear the full story can listen to my podcast with Mia Friedman, the Lady Startup podcast, where I talk about this. But I wrote a book about a swingers party. And so, of course, I am not in the scene myself. And I thought, well, as soon as I go out and try and talk about this book, the first question I'm going to get from you, Janine, is going to be, so how did you do your research? And I thought, I'm going to have to say that I went to a party. I don't want to be saying, well, I read about it in books. And so I booked tickets to go to a swingers party. I told Christian, my husband, who's very supportive but was very unsure about the whole thing. And I said, we're going to a swingers party. And he said, really? And I said, yep, it's going to be great. It was a very exclusive swingers party. It was very expensive. You had to be under 40, and we just scraped in, and you had to send a photo of yourself to make sure you were attractive enough. So off we went. We flew to Sydney. We went into this swingers party, and look, I won't give you all the details because I don't know what kind of audience we have there, but let's just say that there were some very interesting moments that we observed, and that Christian is probably still traumatized to this day. And so when the book failed to come out, when we got the news that the book wasn't quite working for different reasons, it wasn't necessarily about the content or that it was too explicit, because it wasn't erotic fiction. It was a Sally Hepworth novel, but it was just set around this swingers party. I remember getting the news, and I hung up the phone and I said to Christian, they're not going to publish the swingers book. And he said, so we went to a swingers party for nothing.
And paid money for it too.
And he said, now it's not a tax deduction.
Because he's an accountant, isn't he, your husband? Yes. Of course, always thinking about things like that. But look, it is good. Well, it's not good for you, but it just shows people out there that, things happen, and not everything works,
That's
But
right.
do you think it'll ever get resurrected down the track?
Look, I get lots of questions. A lot of people are interested in this book, and I hope so. And I'm sort of stuck between this. I like the idea of it coming back. I like the idea of the concept. That's why I wrote it. At the same time, there's something about the new shiny book idea that appeals to me so much more than going back to a book and trying to rewrite it. It's like builders, they call it green fielding if they've got a nice empty field, and brown fielding if they've got to go in and renovate something that is already there. And I'm a green fielder, so I will never say never, but at the moment I'm more interested in new ideas.
Yes. So now you've just sent off your book for next year. That's right, isn't it? So what's the title of that book?
Well, it's currently called The Stepmother, but we don't know if it will stay that way, and because they always change, and we'll see. But the funny thing is, it is about a stepmother, a much younger stepmother, but it marries into an adult family. In fact, the stepmother is a similar age to the adult daughters, which is a phenomenon that I've seen a bit of lately. A lot of my friends have got stepmothers who are about their age. And so that was something I wanted to explore. But really at its heart, it's a book about fathers and the role that fathers play on women. But you'll be glad to know that there is some menace and some mystery, and there is a murder in the very first scene.
I tell you what, all your books could finish up in the crime section at the rate you're going. They really could.
I'm going to have to start getting some more black jumpers, I think, and wearing my very serious glasses, because I could be, except that they're fogged up, I could be a crime writer now, don't you think?
Well, I don't think you have to have glasses to be a crime writer. Not necessarily.
I don't even have any black jumpers. It's not going to work.
Oh, well, I'm sure once this goes viral, this video, there'll be companies out there, manufacturers, that will all of a sudden start sending you black jumpers.
Black jumpers.
Yes, yes. And of course, we were going to be having you and Rachel and Lisa at Bunjil Place earlier this year, but COVID put the, knife in the coffin for that one. But hopefully we can get you out next year, the three of you. But it all depends on whether all the borders are open and what's going on. But it'll be lovely. It'll be a hoot. It'll be a real hoot when you do come out. Now,
we're all in.
How have you found COVID? It's put pressure on everybody, but I mean, you're used to working from home or at the library anyway, and all of a sudden your space has been invaded by your children and by your husband, and I know what you've been up to, but I tell you what, I don't envy you. I really don't. When Clementine coming in with, makeup all over her face and everything, and there's been a few posts that you put up where you've just got the glazed look in your eyes and saying, what am I doing here?
It has been madness. So when we were in the first lockdown, we still had our nanny then, and so it was still difficult because we were all in a house together and we weren't able to leave, and the homeschooling was happening, but at least we had a nanny who was just watching Clementine, and then Christian and I were trying to work and help the other kids with the homeschooling. Then the second lockdown happened and our nanny had gone home, like everyone else, gone back to her country. And so then we had 3 children, one of whom is Clementine, which is worth 4 kids really. And 2 parents trying to work full time. I was under deadline. I was preparing to promote The Good Sister. And it was like, Christian said to me one day, it's like living with a bunch of trolls in an old 80s video game. You're trying to get out the door or trying to get to something, and they're just throwing, boulders at you, and you have to leap over them. And that's just what life was like in COVID. It was insane. I installed a lock on my office door so the kids couldn't get in, but they, of course, just stood out there going, mummy, 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 mummy. Oh. And then one of them realised that they could get a knife, and it was like Nightmare on Elm Street. They'd get a knife and they'd flick the lock up, and they'd bust in the door. I mean, it was madness. But someone said to me actually at the library, she said, have you been missing the people watching that you get at the library and the observing of people? And I said, well, I've been observing some pretty weird people in my own house up close, and I can tell you I have plenty of material for a new book.
Well, if you ever need any more material about libraries, we can definitely help you.
Oh, good. Thank you.
That's for sure. Okay, Courtney, do we have any questions? Oh, we do have a question. Okay, the first question is, who optioned the movie? I think we've actually already answered that, haven't we? It was Amy Poehler.
Yes, it was Amy Poehler. She has a production company called Paper Kite, and it is a small group of women who run this company, and there's probably about 10 of them, and they sold it to NBC, which is a network, and so they are working together to attach the actors and to work on the scripts and things. So it's a collaboration.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And will it be a movie or is it a mini-series?
TV series.
A TV series. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Limited series, I think. So it'd be 8 to 10 episodes.
Wow. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm just waiting for some more questions. But in the meantime, what's the best way for people to connect with you online?
Well, I'm always on Instagram, as you know.
Yep.
In fact, yesterday was Clementine's birthday, and I was not on Instagram for about 8 hours because she was requiring all of my attention. And I got a few messages from people saying, are you okay? Because I'm usually very, very responsive on there.
You are.
That is a great way to connect with me. I also have got a contact page on my website. I am on Facebook, although I'm less fast on there. I'm not on there as often. And yeah, that's probably the best. Instagram's the number one.
Okay.
Sure.
Now, Erin has asked, what did you do before you wrote books?
Great question. So I did an arts degree at university, and then I had a few years working in event management where it was a super cool, woefully underpaid job where we organised music festivals, and one of my jobs was to go to the music festivals and drive the mini cart with the stars, the singers, from backstage to the signing tent where they would go and sign their CDs and things. So I got to meet, REM and Michael Franti, Sarah McLachlan, and, just all sorts of big stars. So that was amazing. And then I did a postgraduate HR qualification, and I moved into human resources. I was very interested in the gossip. You got to find out how much everyone was getting paid, and who had the sexual assault things on their file. So that was super fun and really helped to inform some of my future books. And I was doing that in Canada until I had my son, and then I wrote the book, came back, I worked part-time in HR, and then, of course, I've been writing full-time since then. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. Now, Laura has said, hello. The Good Sister is the first of your books that she's read. Loved it. I'm wondering if there's a book of yours that you recommend, or one that was the most fun to write.
Oh, the most fun. Look, I love The Mother-in-Law. I have such an affection for that book for many reasons, most of which is Diana, the character. I just loved creating her. I loved to hate her. I loved to love her. And just to see the relationship between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law work and not work, I found that I really enjoyed that, writing that book, although it was not without its difficulties, as they all are. The other book I think that I would probably put in my favourites is The Things We Keep, which was my second book, and it's an Alzheimer's love story. And it was a very research intense book, and I got so caught up in that story. And it's still I still hear from people all the time that say that book helped me understand how to speak to my grandfather or my father, or it helped me, realize the magic of the nurses, or, I just feel like while it was probably not my most page-turning book, I feel like it really said what I wanted to say about love and about the way we remain even after our memories are gone. So they're probably the two. But look, The Secrets of Midwives I loved because that was my first one to really, my first foray into published writing. And, I like them all, but they're probably the two that I like the most.
Okay. Now, Laura has asked, in the beginning of your writing career, what came first, the agent or the publisher?
Agent, yes. The agent. I'll look at that cute little baby. The agent came first. So that very first book that I wrote when I was on maternity leave with Oscar, I got to the end of that year, wrote the book, and that book actually, it was not a very good book, to be clear. But I was optimistic and I thought this is going to be my big chance. And so I submitted it to all sorts of agents all over the world. And as it happened, that book did land me an agent.
How did you know who to submit to, or did you Google that as well?
Oh, I Googled
agents. Yep.
I Googled agents. I Googled how to submit to agents, and I was told that you have to write a query letter. And I then Googled how to write a query letter. And then I wrote the query letter. And then I Googled how to edit a query letter. And where do I send my query letter? And, all the answers are there. And so I went through that process. How did I know? I sent it to all of them, every agent in the world. I was rejected by most of them, but I did get an email from one female agent at the Rob Weisbach Creative Management Agency. She offered to represent me. She worked with me on that first book that eventually sold to a German publisher, but didn't sell in the first run. And then she decided to leave agenting. And so I thought, no publishing deal, no agent. But she said, I'll let the owner of the agency, Rob Weisbach, read it. And if he likes it, maybe he can represent you. And he did read it and he did like it. And he's still my agent to this day.
Aww.
And he's a wonderful agent. And he was the one that sold The Secrets of Midwives to my publisher, St. Martin's Press in the States, and then they've all been contracted ever since then. So it's kind of just ticked along. But even though he gets 15% of all of my sales, but I do really, really highly recommend people finding an agent, because he's made me so much more money than the 15% that he has claimed back. And we are in communication on a daily basis, not only about him selling the book, but he's so involved strategically in my career, in future books. He helps edit. He's just a really involved agent. And I think a really great agent is such a wonderful thing for a writer to have.
They can do all the legwork for you. That's the thing, especially if you don't know where to go, you don't know who to talk to. You've got to sort of spend money to make money, the old, saying. So no.
And they only get paid if we get paid. So it's really them taking the leap of faith with us, and it allows us to do what we want to do, which is right, and they can take care of the rest. So
all the business side of things, which is great.
It's perfect for me.
Haven't got any other questions at the moment, so I'll just keep on chugging along with other things. Right now, I just want to let everyone know that all of Sally's books are available to borrow from the library in every format: print, ebook, e-audiobook, large book, large print book, audiobook. So hop onto the catalogue and reserve them now. And also The Good Sister will be a top title. All our patrons will know what that means. So you should be able to pop into a branch probably within the next week or thereabouts. I'll be out in branches and you'll be able to pick one up to read straight away rather than waiting for 3 months if you've got it on hold. And also, we've also purchased the ebook and e-audio book of Sally's first book, The Secret of Midwives, and we've got that on unlimited borrowings. So it means that everyone can log on and get it, and they don't have to wait as well. So that's really good. And that's only for a limited time. Now, the other exciting thing is we've got some giveaways. Sally's publisher, Pan Macmillan, is giving away a copy of The Good Sister, and it will be signed because Sally has very generously signed about 20 of these book plates. So one of those will be going with the book. So all you have to do in the comments, down below in the comments, all you have to do is type in, "I want to win." And when you do that, we're going to draw the winners on Wednesday next week. And so you've got till midnight Tuesday night to put "I want to win," and you'll be in the chance to win a copy of the book. Or if you miss out on that one, you'll get a copy of the book plate to put in your book at home, which I think is fabulous. And thank you, Sally, for doing all those for us.
Oh, you're most welcome. And for those of you who do read my books, something that I would really love if you are a reviewer is to go on and leave a review on Goodreads or on Amazon or on wherever you review books. Even if you just post on social media and say, "I loved this book." We really, as authors, and especially in this pandemic time, we rely so much on word of mouth and people telling people about their books and telling the library, and you guys have been so supportive. So reviews mean the world to authors and helping other people find our books. So that would be most appreciated.
Now, what do you like to read when you're not writing?
Oh, I read everything, and I'm constantly reading. One of the most glorious things about being an author is that people send me books, books of my friends, new authors to me. I recently read the most fantastic book by Fiona Higgins, who wrote The Mothers Group a few years ago, and she has come out with a new book called An Unusual Boy, which is about a boy on the spectrum, a young 8-9-year-old boy who, it's really hard to describe this book without giving it away. Something happens to him at school and he's caught up in this incident, and because of his additional needs, he's not able to kind of communicate his way out of it. And it's a gripping read. It's an important read. It makes you think, and that was just a real standout. But I read Jane Harper's The Survivors recently, which was just fantastic. The Dictionary of Lost Words is one of the greatest reads I've had recently. I got an early copy of Kelly Rimmer's new book. I'm
so jealous. Oh.
It's The Warsaw Orphan. It is not a continuation of, but there is a kind of sister link with her book, The Things We Cannot Say, and is the sister of the character Thomas, or Amelia.
Amelia, yes.
Yes, carries on in this book, and it is every bit as good, in fact, better than The Things We Cannot Say, which is one of my best books of all time. So
that was the one that you recommended when you were on Good Morning America too, weren't you?
It was.
Yes. I think Kelly was very grateful.
Yeah, and in fact, after that, Sarah Haynes, who is from Good Morning America, asked her to come on, and it was during COVID, so they did it virtually, but Kelly was also on Good Morning America after that. So yeah, look, we've got a great authors network and camaraderie here as well.
You have.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you won't read? Like, have you got a genre that just doesn't interest you, or, you know?
Probably horror. Although, and it's definitely not something I have picked up a lot of, but I was sent a book that was written, it wasn't horror, but it was written by an author who had made her name in horror. And I've forgotten the name of it now, of course. But when I discovered that she used to write horror, I could see, you know, she had her beginnings as a horror writer really laced into it. And it made me think, you know, if you can write this well, maybe I would give horror a go. So look, if it crosses my desk, I will usually give it a go.
Yeah.
But there is definitely things like horror, probably erotic fiction, although I did read 50 Shades of Grey and I thought it was kind of sexy. But generally speaking, erotic fiction isn't something I would seek out. Or, you know, sort of Mills and Boon type romance, although I think that they're very good and very well done.
Popular.
So extremely popular. So I think the answer is never say never to anything, but there are definitely ways that, you know, that I lean into in terms of what I do like to read.
Yeah. So what are you reading at the moment?
I'm about to start a new book by a new author, and it's not published yet. And I wish I could give it a thing, but it's up next to my bed, and it's
that's okay.
Yeah, but it's a fantastic. I'm just about to dive in, and really looking forward to it. So
yeah. Now, we did have another question, but I think we've sort of answered it a bit. It said, Mary was asking, what research did you do for the Good Sister book? But I think we've covered a fair bit of that.
Yeah, look, I think, as I said, it was a big part of it was the neurodiversity, which I was able to lean on my own experience for. There were things like fertility, diabetes. There was, I think I can say, without giving any spoilers, that there was a narcissism element as well, which I did research quite extensively, which was really interesting. Most of my research with all books that I write start with books that other people have written to kind of inform that. And then I try to go next to people if I can. I did join a narcissism Facebook group for this.
That would have been interesting.
It was for people who had a family member who was narcissistic, and it was really interesting. I went in undercover and just lurked. You know, I didn't make up a false scenario, but I just lurked, and I thought, wow, my family is so much nicer than I thought. They're not that bad. So look, there's always really interesting research that is done, and this one was not one of my more research intensive books, but, you know, as I say to Christian all the time, if I get hit by a car, go and delete my browser history, because by God, there is some stuff in there. I'm a writer.
Oh, God. Now, Erin's also asked another question. We rarely see your son on Instagram. Is he camera shy?
He is camera shy, and he's on the spectrum, my son, and he prefers to not be involved. And luckily, this is Clementine knocking on the door now saying, "Mummy, mummy," and my daughters very happy to take that space. So I do like to show my family, and I capture them in, you know, really realistic moments, but I want to make sure that they want to be there, and I'm really respectful if they do not want to be there. So
Yeah.
But he is the sweetest, loveliest child. Christian and I always say he's the best one of us all. So it's a shame, but for us who know him, there's lots to love.
Oh, that's good. Now, Courtney's also got a question. Will you write a non-fiction book about your ISO experience with kids?
We could make a documentary about it, I think. I don't know. A lot of people say there should be a TV show about my family. Look, I don't think I'd ever write a non-fiction book because I enjoy making stuff up too much. But yeah, look, maybe a fly on the wall documentary one day.
Now, Sarah has asked, was there a book you read as a child or a teenager that stayed with you?
Oh, so many. As a child, all of the Enid Blyton, the Naughtiest Girl in the School series, all of Roald Dahl, The Witches. I remember The Witches being the first book that I realized that I enjoyed being scared. It was so scary and I was uncomfortable about it, but I kept wanting to pick it up. So, and that has made me think that as a parent, it's okay for kids to be scared, you know, in that kind of safe environment, to teach them that they can, you know, experience fear in a book, and that's okay once they're a certain age, of course.
Yeah.
As an older teenager looking for Alabrandy, you know, I really cut my teeth on, like a lot of young girls. And then when I was older, a book called Tully by Paulina Simons. I was a big reader. I always had my nose in a book. My mum was a school teacher, and she used to go to her school library and ask the librarian to pick books for me depending on what age I was, and she would come home, and Mum was so wild about reading that if I finished a book one night, I'd give it back to her to return to the library, and by the time I got home from school the next day, if there was another one in the series, it was there waiting for me.
Oh, and now that's what you call customer service.
I know. And I always think that is, so many people ask me, how can I make my child a reader? And there's two bits of advice. One is read yourself, you know, because they do what you do. And the second piece of advice is put the book in their hands, you know, just don't make it difficult for them. Keep giving them that book. And my mum was always putting library books in my hands. We went to the bookstore together. It was a treat. We knew it was a treat to get a book. And, you know, how do you not develop a love of reading under those circumstances?
Oh, absolutely. When you say make sure they see you read, you better make sure they don't see you do other things too. You know?
Or if they do, quickly pick up a book.
Yes,
That's
right. That's right. Oh, dear. Well, I don't think we've got any more questions at the moment. I don't think so. But look, thank you so much, Sally. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. It always is. And we really appreciate you coming on. And I wish you every success, which I'm sure is already there with the Good Sister.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
When does it launch overseas? It's at a different time, isn't it?
Not until end of April. So they're almost 6 months apart, which is new. And it means that I'm kind of doing the Australia leg of the promotion now, and then it'll stop and then it'll happen again. But they're both good times going into the summer. It's kind of a great summer read for reading on the beach and as people go into their holidays. So I think they're good times for both areas, but
it just means you have to do it all over again in April. You'll have to do all these things again in April, but that's okay because you've got a whole audience over there that know nothing about it yet. So that's great. They've got a lot to look forward to.
That's right, exactly.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up now. So don't forget, if you want to win a copy of Sally's book, just in the comments below, put I want to win, or if you want a book plate, you'll be in the draw for that, and we'll draw it next week. So thanks, Sally, for coming on, and we really look forward to seeing you at Bunjil Place next year, hopefully.
Me too.
All being well. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.